have a look at my bird's nest. So yeah, this is the next stage in figuring out my EFI conversion, and I've chosen to use the ECU Master Emu Black. This is the ECU here. It's pretty small. Hopefully people use them, they have success, so I can't see why it won't work. It should be fine. Quite a small unit, 2 plugs, and there's an ant. So what I've spent the last day or so couple of days doing is wrapping my head around all the wires, and it's not too bad because this one actually comes with a pre-terminated harness, and each cable is labelled with what it's supposed to go to, whether it's injectors 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, coil, TPS, ground, sensor ground, whatnot. So what I've done is I have made a little chart, because I'm going to use one of these connectors, not because I'm trying to be fancy, but purely because really this adds a lot of extra effort, I think. There's a lot more crimps and a lot more things to maybe go wrong, but this should make it a little bit easier for building the harness on the engine itself. So as long as I've got a dedicated spot where this mounts, then I can do the harness on the engine, which will plug into this. So I have numbered everything. I've got my allocations, like whether it's the grey terminal, which is the G, or the black terminal, and I've got all my inputs or outputs, whatever they are, and I've just double checked, triple checked, quadruple checked, and I've got them all laid out. So this one on the left, this is the main harness, which is going to go from the car, so from the ECU mounted underneath the seat. That's going to run through the firewall and up into the engine bay, and then each of these wires is going to end up in the back of this plug, and that's going to be mounted somewhere in the engine bay. Not 100% certain where yet, but I'll figure that out before I start cutting things. And then these wires over here will be going to power, grounds, and the tacho and the fuel pump. And for my power distribution, what I'm going to be using is one of these Bussmann relay boxes. And again, getting my head around relays and what they do, etc., etc. But I think it's pretty straightforward. I've measured out a power supply cable. So this is actually going to mount in the engine bay where the old CDI unit used to mount. And it actually comes with a little mounting bracket here, and it bolts up exactly to where the CDI would that mount, so that's perfect. And this is the power cable. This is going to run through over the back of the bulkhead and down to the positive terminal on the starter. Okay, so all the power that's going to run the ECU and supply the injectors, the coils, and all the sensors is going to come directly from the battery. And the way I'm going to hook this one up, it's probably a little bit different to how some people do it, but I'm going to have my relays, the coil that's in the relay will be grounded to the chassis, and then I'm going to use switched 12 volts from the ignition. So when I turn the key, it's going to then power the fuses and then the relays, of course. The pump will be run, that'll be grounded by the ECU separately, so that wire in here which runs the pump will ground that relay by itself, and then the power will go from there to the pump at the front of the car. So that's how I'm going to be using that. And the reason why I wanted to use this, it's probably a bit of overkill, but I think it's handy to be able to pull out a relay, so I disable all my my ignition or my fuel for when you're cranking and trying to get oil pressure, or also say you're trying to get your base timing set or your trigger offset, and you need to take the injectors out of the equation so you can crank and have spark but no fuel. Yeah, so that's why I'm using that, and I've used it in a couple of other cars and it works well. So that's all of that. The only thing that was a little bit of a weird thing, well, maybe it's just me because this is the first time I'm doing it, but I'm using a Bosch LSU 4.9 wideband, and I wasn't sure how critical all these colours were, because they've got all the right colours in the plug, but none of these coloured wires are in the correct position according to this pinout here. But the plug itself, I don't know if you can see it. There you can. So you can see on the bottom it's got 1, 3 and 5. So obviously on the top is 2, 4 and 6. So that's looking at the plug like that, I believe. So I'm just going to ignore the colours of the wires, and yeah, I'm going to connect my wideband through that, and I'll be running. I'm going to have a couple of 12 volt or 3 12 volt supplies, that's what's coming from that Bussmann relay box there. And they're going to go through this. You'll see there's 3 larger pins. So I'm going to have one for the injectors, where's the other one? Injectors, coils, and then the third one will be to power my wideband, idle valve, and my boost controller. Again, I've been told it's overkill, and I'm happy to go through the extra work. But yeah, so that's where I'm at the moment, and the next stage is to just double check how long this one needs to be before I'll cut it and then start pinning into that terminal. Hopefully it's all good.